So yeah, thank you. Thank you, Steve. Wonderful. Thanks for the invitation, and thanks everyone for being here. So some of you might know me as Sara L, but tonight I'm premiering as Stockholm Sara to have it a bit more easy. Yes, thank you, Sara L for the heart. So my name is Sara. I am a compulsive overeater and a codependent. I have recovered by doing the steps in the book. I've done it 3 times. When I was asked to speak tonight, it's 8 o'clock Swedish time, I was wondering which steps to choose. And I prayed on it for a bit because there's so much to say about every step, obviously. On the other hand, there is actually one step which is central, which is for me has been the hub, or is actually the hub of the whole circle of all the steps, and it's step number 4 and 5, because it is there where the real hope starts. So I'm going to talk about how I took step 4 and 5. I'm going to tell you a little bit something, not very much about my background. I'm not going to dwell too much about, all my difficult situations in life and such, but just something so that you understand where I'm coming from. So I'm 50 years old. I grew up in Stockholm, Sweden. When I was 5 years old, I realized that I was not really as other kids, and it was because of the abuse that I experienced by adults. And it changed me, and also my mother lived with an alcoholic, a man, not my dad. And the whole thing with this man is sort of the starting point for me as a codependent. It also started a series of a series of incidents where I ran away from home. And that started my wish to move to other countries. So when I was 7, I was already outside school. I didn't attend school and all that. And when I was 10, I was already a patient at the psychiatric ward here in Sweden. And I was in and out, and no one understood what it was. I completely understood that I could manipulate my way through life and find soothing for my my anxiety that I was carrying all the time. And so when I was 15, I was a full-fledged manipulator. I was lying constantly. I had no idea what was going on. I was just managing from minute to minute. And I had realized that I could also get rid of a lot of my anxiety through binging food, stuffing myself with food to the extent that, you can't stuff it anymore. And I threw up and all that started. So at 17, I was already homeless. I was living on the streets of London. Back in the 80s, it was very cheap for Swedish people to go to London when we did that, and many of us, and it was interesting, and clubbing and music and all that culture and everything was going on. So I ran away from home. I was homeless on the streets of London, and I really was homeless. I lived outside in the cold for more or less a year. And I had no boundaries. I didn't know, my mother and father didn't take care of me properly, and I was afraid of adults all the time. So I couldn't really cope with other people, but I could manipulate them, so I can control them. So I was completely codependent on other people by controlling them. I depended on them for food, somewhere to sleep, warmth, affection, and I manipulated them so that I could get those things. I had also realized that food was a huge issue for me. And instead of drinking and taking drugs, I used food as that drug. And I used control of other people as that drug. It's the same void that I've been hearing in so many different fellowships, in so many different rooms, you know, the big void inside, and stuffing it with whatever. If someone would have given me a lamppost and said, what can you do with this? I would have abused it. I would have, you could give me a chair, a cup of tea or anything, I would just misuse it and abuse it. I took anything that came in my path. So I was living on the streets, and obviously you're exposed as a young woman. And I used also my sexuality to gain somewhere to sleep, etc. and all that. Coming back to Sweden after a series of incidents that nearly killed me, I realized that there was a way to survive and perhaps, you know, calm down a little bit. And I couldn't take it because I was nose bleeding from anemia, and I wasn't eating anything properly, and etc. So I sort of was forced back to Sweden. Then I came. I'm going to jump now to almost today. So living with alcoholics became a way for me to manage my life. Binging, overeating, being a compulsive overeater, couldn't stop eating, could not stop from starting, and when I started, I couldn't stop. So that's maybe something that some people in this room can relate to. I lived with an alcoholic, my boyfriend, and he became so dangerous at the end of last year that I was really, I was fearing for my life. And I kind of broke down and came to a co-anon, a codependent affiliated to CA meeting, and started going to meetings, but didn't really feel at home. I took a sponsor, and that sponsor, unfortunately, was not really well. So she hadn't recovered. And so she left me basically in step 4. She ghosted me, as they say. So I was doing step 4 in my inventory and going through all my wrongdoings and everything, but I couldn't really understand what was happening to me. I just felt worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. I tried to get in contact with my sponsor, and it didn't work. She wasn't there, and I made a lot of drama. I ran around in all sorts of meetings. I don't think there was one meeting in Stockholm, Sweden that I didn't attend to, and I made a huge drama talking about my own problem and having all kinds of people, you know, talking to me after the meetings and everything. Very big drama queen. And at the end, someone said, well, are you recovering with your sponsor? And I said, no, I'm not. Well, leave her. You know, and that was, you know, somebody said something after 7 weeks. And I was down at the bottom again, left my sponsor. And that was actually realizing that now I am probably crashing for real. So around New Year's, this is October now, so we're talking about 10 months ago, basically, I completely crashed. I had done my inventory in step 4. I was, I hadn't handed it over to no one. So I was just sitting with my stuff, and I crashed. I crashed so much that my binging was to the extent that I went to the emergency room and with bleeding in my throat, etc. And I knew that I had basically 1 week to live. When we stuff ourselves with so much drugs, whatever it is, if it's food or anything else, for years, we're talking about 35 years basically, the body can't take it anymore. And with all the trauma and everything that I experienced, it wasn't possible to live, basically. I didn't know how I was going to die, but I knew I had basically 1 week. And I was, one morning I woke up and I realized that I need to call 911. The equivalent in Sweden is 112. And I need help because otherwise I will die. For some reason, I Googled OA, Overeaters Anonymous. And I thought this might be something, I'll try it. And I saw that they had a meeting, it was a phone meeting. So I called up and someone said, yeah, sorry, we're in the middle of the meeting. You have to wait for 10 minutes. I can't, I'm gonna die, help me. And I basically very much interrupted the meeting. And they said, well, you have to wait. And I said, okay then. And I was sitting there and thinking 10 minutes, 9 minutes, 8 minutes, 7. And then everyone came, like it was like a tsunami of people, just stayed after the meeting, gave me numbers and everything. And within a few hours, I had a sponsor, because I said to them, I need a tough sponsor. I need someone who can take me through the steps, because I'd realized that there's something in this book. People were talking about the book. We hadn't really done the book before. And I just knew that thing, the steps would be the solution for some reason. And people started calling each other. There was this phone chain. And I ended up with this woman in the phone. And I knew it was it. She was the one. She asked me really hard questions, like very tough love. And yeah, so she said 48 hours abstinence, and then we go. And then we started. And it was just, I just did everything she said. And we read the book out loud, every other page, a few days a week. And finally, we came to step 4. And so what we did was we started reading, and I was excited. I was overexcited. I just wanted to do it. I just wanted to get it over and done with. But she slowed me down. She said, you need to be thorough. You need to do this properly, because if you don't, you're going to fall later. Do you want to fall later? I'll never forget those words. And I said, no, then you do it now. And I knew that if I wouldn't do it properly this time, I don't think then I knew I wouldn't make it. So the brutal honesty of step 4 is like so important. So I'll read a little bit. We started personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and a fact-facing process. So what is actually a process? A process is a series of actions that we take in order to achieve a specific goal or a specific end. So it's a continuous thing. It's not a solution. It's not something that we just do when we're ready and then that's it. We're starting a process. It's a lifelong process. It's such a huge difference understanding that what a process is. And it's not a solution that we just do it and then it's finished and then I'm good. No, it's a process. You start it and it's never going to end, basically. So it's something that goes on, and this is going to take all my life. And it's an effort to discover the truth about myself. So one other thing which is really interesting, here comes something that I really appreciated when reading the big book thoroughly. One object is to disclose damage or unsellable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. which means do it now. Don't give your sponsee 7 weeks in this state of mind with trauma and re-traumatize and everything. Do it promptly and now, with no regret. That's very important for me, because when I did it, I only had a couple of days, very few days, and it was like I just went. And I did it honestly, and I sort of got the understanding that if I get an overview of my problems, it doesn't have to be perfect. I just write a few things, but to see my repetitive behavior, it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to cover everything, just repetition, my patterns. There I go again, there I go again, there I go again. I was just furious. I was furious. I had rage, and all the rage that I had sort of projected to other people and blamed other people and manipulated other people and lied and fucked things up. All that rage that I was living every single day since I was a kid, I just took that rage and I just turned it inwards, but I turned it into like, I'm gonna fight this, I'm gonna fight this. I'm just gonna be so honest. It was that rage turned into brutal honesty. And it's sort of it's when I speak to my sponsees, I try to distinguish how urgently they need a solution, because this is where I understood that I had that urgency to be able to be that brutally honest, that I needed to be able to move forward. And this is the beautiful thing about step number 4 is the hope, because this is it. This is where we get the hope. This is the solution. This is where it starts. The beginning is step 1, 2, 3. It's like, yeah, I wanna, yeah, I can't, I need to, I want to, yes, give it to me. That's the beginning. But now here starts the solution. And it's so hopeful. And it really is like the hub. So everything comes back to step number 4 all the time. And it's just a continuous process. I love that about step 4. So when I started the inventory, was it my self-esteem, my security, my ambitions, my personal or sexual relation, which had been interfered with, as it says. So interfered is also interesting, as it's not the same as was my self-esteem destroyed. It was never destroyed, it was interfered with. So interfered is when we intervene with a situation without being invited to or without necessity. So I felt I needed my belief system intact. And then someone did something to me and they intervened. They broke that sacred space that I had created, a complete lie. And it was also interesting doing the steps, understanding the difference with that my relationships and self-esteem, security were interfered, not broken. It wasn't destroyed, it was interfered, it was just shaken. So I could change that. It's also very helpful and hopeful. So it's not irreversible, which is what I thought in the beginning. I thought I had been destroyed. I hadn't been destroyed. I had been interfered with the image I had of myself as a security. And another thing I also thought was really interesting, for those of you who have read the book and done the steps, perhaps, it says here, as in war, the victor only seemed to win. And it reminds me of Bill's story when he is so happy to be the hero. You know, there is a war and he's a hero. I can be a soldier because I get people are going to hurrah me and they're going to be, you know, raise me up, and I'm the hero here. And of course, it's just a traumatized, broken person who drinks to be able to be a successful soldier, as I did. So I manipulated people, and I abused food, and I abused people and relationships to be able to be the hero and play the hero. And I was mothering other people. I was manipulating other people. I was being a martyr, and I played the martyr. And I was mastering other people as a control. And I thought I was the hero. I was helping people, even people who didn't want to be helped. So I thought I was the winner because I helped everyone, but it was just controlling them. And that's where, I mean, my codependency stemmed from a complete lack of control. And I didn't have my basic needs. So obviously I had to control other people. That's what I did. And I think that so instead of understanding now that I'm just traumatized and I can get out of being the hero, the victor, that is for me the biggest, one of the biggest shifts in thinking. Also in my work, I've been a consultant and I've been helping people in crisis all my life. For 30 years, I've helped people in crisis. And it's the same. I just wanted to be the hero. But actually, I don't want to anymore. So I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm not doing it anymore. So I'm looking for a new job and a completely different change. So the anger that I felt, I directed to sort of get rid of, like rip myself off, rip off all of the shit that I was carrying. And I did that with the inventory. And I remember I wrote so fast I couldn't see what I was writing. I just wrote furiously. I broke pens, started writing on the computer, and I couldn't see what I was writing. I wrote like half words. I was just needed to push. And then I had to stop because I became a bit too obsessive. And a fellow in the program said, have you felt God? I said, yeah, sure, yeah. I've been a practicing Buddhist for 25 years, so yeah, I've got everything covered actually. I'm a really good Buddhist, and yeah, I know everything about that. I'm very spiritual, very spiritual. Yeah. And he said, has that helped? Yeah, it's very good, all very good. I'm just doing this now, and maybe you know, can you help me do the inventory? I have a couple of questions. And he said, well, if you just sit down and feel the air in the room where you are, that's God. And that calmed me down. And I suddenly realized that, again, my former spirituality hadn't worked because it was, again, something outside of me, something that I was reaching for and I was working towards a result. But then I realized that this sense of God being the air in the room. And my friend said, you're never alone. You're always held. That was, that really changed me. And honestly, it was the first time in my entire life, I was 50 years old, that I didn't feel alone for the first time in my life. Doesn't matter how many people I had around me normally, that was the turning point. And I completely surrendered, actually, in that moment. And I thought, this is a change, and I'm going to change it now. And then I just dropped everything I'd written, rewrote. Took me 20 minutes, and I was like, boom, yeah, I'm done. And so my sponsor and I went through the fears, and we went through the resentments, and all the sex problems that I had. And the thing that I did was the two-way prayer. I mean, so I basically sat down and I asked for guidance. What I'd done previously, when people said, hand over to God, people keep saying that, hand that over to God. And I did. I handed everything over in the beginning. I just threw things at God. Like, yeah, can you take this? I was chucking stuff at, take this, take that. But it was like I was throwing, china around me. It was just broken glass and broken stuff all around me. I didn't understand that it was a communication. So I kind of realized that I had to hand over my issue, my problem, and listen to the answer. I hadn't done that before. I was just throwing things around me. So I was walking around in garbage and all my stuff that I left. And that's when I started understanding that there is a dialogue, and God is that. It's just here all around me all the time. So, and how is that possible? And how can I feel that? And I can't. It was just such a shift for me. And I started listening to the answer, like, can you help me with this, whoever you are? And it just came to me. Answers like, simple answers like, be honest and stuff. It seemed so ridiculously simple that it cannot be true. But it worked. It really worked. Especially when it came to sex problems. Because me having been abused so many times and also used sex to gain a lot of things, it was very difficult for me to get around, where have I manipulated? Where have I, harmed other people? How can I be involved? I was only the victim. But again, my sponsor had this amazingly easy way to say to me, ask God if you've missed something. And I did. And it worked. And I was just baffled how it worked. One of the problems, though, for a codependent person when it comes to working with the sexual problems in step 4 is that we ask ourselves, where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? We often think that we're to blame all the time. So it's a thin line to also take responsibility instead of blaming ourselves. So that was a tricky one. So that's another thing to be aware of. And also, I think in handing over everything to my sponsor the first time, in step 5, I did I kind of handed it over, like I left it to someone else to take care of it instead of taking care of it myself. And that was also a huge shift for me to understand that we think the reason is that, you know, having persevered with the rest of the program, we don't understand when we fall later on in the program, which I did the first time. And I didn't realize that I hadn't been thoroughly honest, and I didn't hand over the steps for myself to my God and to my sponsor. I handed it over to leave it with someone else. I didn't leave it to hand it over to God and have a relationship with God together with my stuff. I gave it away. And that was a huge shift for me when I realized that I needed to take responsibility in a completely different way. So in step number 5, we talk about how the alcoholic leads a double life and how the addict leads a double life and is very much the actor. And of course I was the actor, I was the director and everything. And that double life that I'd led and lying so much, I had also problems. I had been disassociated very much, which means that I can't stay in focus and I'm leaving my body and I don't know where I am. And that kind of became a reality check for me when I started feeling everything. When I handed over the steps, step 4 to my sponsor, and I realized that my double life was worse than I realized. And I started feeling things for the first time in a very long, very, very, very long time, perhaps first time in my life. In page 75, it says something also really important to me. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. So I had this urgency, and it's helpful to hear those words, you know, waste no time. To me, I did it straight away. And that was, I think, the first time, because it took so long, it just almost destroyed me. It was important for me to do it promptly and just immediately. One of the things that I discovered in sponsoring myself is how easy it is to say the right things in step 4. It's easy to be the good sponsee, and it's easy as a sponsor to be codependent and wanting the sponsee to move forward and to become abstinent, etc. A really good quote, and something that I try to remember myself when I'm sponsoring, especially in this step, is this one. When we're not sponsoring or telling our story to newcomers to make them abstinent, nor to keep them in the program. We sponsor to keep what we have. This is the right motive. This motive will keep our pride out of the way and prevent many heartaches and disappointments when some of our sponsees choose not to accept the gift of the program. So I sponsor to keep what I have. I don't sponsor to keep other people in the program. I can only share what I've been given. And yeah, I think I'll stop there. Thanks.